Greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke Beppu, and I hope you are all having a really nice day today, my dear friends. I have been in the middle of trying to clean up my shelves of Criterion titles. As some of you may know, I usually do I make videos in this little part of my room, and I've chosen as the background my actual shelves, which are right here. But I'm usually a pretty messy person by nature. It's something that's just part of my character makeup, I suppose. It's very difficult for me to avoid, so I apologize for that. But once in a while I do get inspired to clean up the shelves, so today is such a day. Actually, I did the cleanup a few days ago, in fact. So what I've done is I have these very nice IKEA shelves, so nothing too expensive, I think. And I have arranged the DVD and Blu-rays of the Criterion collection all the way up there and going down here, and then extending all the way to this shelf, and then there's another shelf on this side which can't be seen at the moment. And then over here I have the Criterion Collection Laserdiscs and the Voyager Company Laserdiscs on these shelves over here. So at last I've been able to put everything more or less together in one single area, so to speak. So that's something that I haven't been able to do so far, so it's really nice to see everything out in the open like this. If you're interested, what I'd like to do now is I'd just like to show you very briefly what it is that I've done with each of these parts of the shelves. Please note that I haven't finished everything, in that I haven't necessarily put everything that I have on the shelves, so you might see stuff that maybe isn't, or you might see stuff that's just on the top of a shelf that isn't really arranged properly, so I apologize for that. This is still a work in progress, so again, I'm trying to work at it as best as I can, but I move very slowly, so I really apologize for that. But in the meantime, if you're interested, please, why don't you join me, and I'll just give you a quick tour of the titles that I have on the shelves. These are all Criterion Collection, by the way, so I hope you enjoy. Take care. So what we have here are the shelves dedicated to the Criterion Collection Laserdiscs. And so if you don't mind, let's just slowly come here, and we can see the top shelf here is dedicated to the first in the Criterion Collection Laserdiscs. So as you can see, spine number 1 is Citizen Kane, and so I have Citizen Kane starting here, and all the other titles are arranged by spine number. So it goes along here, and then it extends to that part of the shelf, and then we go down here, and then we go to that part of the shelf, and then we go down here, and then we go to this part of the shelf, and then we go down here, and then we go to this part of the shelf over here, and then the remaining titles continue on this separate shelf right here. And then we have the continuation of the Criterion spine number titles here. And then around here we get some television related titles like I Love Lucy and The Addams Family. And then from here on we get Rolling Thunder Pictures, Sonatine, etc. And then here we have the beginning of the Voyager Laserdiscs. So the Voyager Laserdiscs start here, and then they continue on to this shelf here, and then they end around here. And then from here on out we have some miscellaneous titles. I suppose I could say one thing here, in that sometimes I have multiple copies of the same title or release. So for example, I have 2 copies of the game. I also have 2 copies of Raging Bull on Laserdisc here, and this is the CAV release of Raging Bull. The reason why I have more than 1 copy of the same release or title, most of the time it's just by accident or by sheer happenstance, so to speak. I won't on purpose try to get more than 1 copy of everything, so I don't consider myself to be a hoarder in the collecting sense of the word. So in other words, I just have 1 copy of something and I'm perfectly happy with that. However, along the way of my collecting journey, so to speak, I have come across, let's say, a title that is very cheap. Maybe I found it online here in Japan for a very cheap price, or I'll have acquired it in a bundle. Maybe I wanted to get a bundle of stuff and I was aiming for one particular item in the bundle, but elsewhere in the bundle there were titles that I had already had in my collection. So those are some reasons why I tend to have more than 1 copy of some of these titles. And I just haven't gotten around to selling them off or giving them away. I have given a couple away as gifts to friends, but that's basically it. Sometimes, however, I will have more than 1 copy for a specific reason. So for example, Raging Bull is a CAV multi-disc release, and this is the CAV release. This is what's known as the trifold release, meaning that it opens up like this and sort of 3, like so, and each disc is housed in a separate compartment. So this is very interesting. Very lovely presentation, by the way. So this is the trifold release of Raging Bull. But I also have what's known as the box release. So this is the same in terms of contents, the disc contents themselves, but instead of a trifold, what we have is a box. And so all the discs are housed within this box. So I have tried to find all these variants to the extent I've been able to with respect to some of the titles in the Criterion collection. So this is true also for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So this is the trifold release of Close Encounters. As you can see, it opens up like so. And here we have the same in terms of contents, of course, but in terms of presentation, it's the box. So yes, I've tried to get as many variants as possible while not necessarily trying to go too overboard, so to speak. So, but those are the sort of things that I really find kind of fascinating when it comes to the Laserdiscs. In terms of discs that were difficult for me to find along the way, there were quite a number actually. The Laserdiscs, of course, are not in production anymore, so they are quite limited in quantity, so to speak. Some titles are, of course, more limited than others, and thus they are difficult to find, and accordingly they end up being the more coveted items in terms of collectability, at least from the point of view of Laserdisc fans and enthusiasts. So some of those items, I would say, would include, for example, the Laserdisc release of Olympia, which I have here. Then there is the Laserdisc box release of Evita. There is the last spine-numbered release of the Criterion Collection Laserdisc, which is Armageddon. And this is quite rare because I understand that the production numbers were relatively low, it being one of the last Laserdiscs to be produced before Laserdiscs basically died out or became a kind of an extinct format, as it were. Then we have Boogie Nights, which I think is a later release, yes, 366. So this also has relatively low production numbers as far as I can understand. Same thing here. We have the CLV release of Brazil. So this is spine number 373. So this is another very late entry in the Criterion Collection spine number releases. So this is quite rare. And perhaps the rarest item that I have is this, which is spine number 159, The Prince of Tides. I mean, regardless of what you think of the film itself, the merits of the film, and I know I've heard this from a lot of people actually, that the film itself is garbage, it's trash, it's a dumb film, etc., etc. So I've heard all of that before. But what I'm talking about here is not the film itself, but rather the item as it is in terms of a Criterion Collection Laserdisc item and collectible. And in the context of that conversation, you may or may not know that this actually was never released to the public at large. It was produced at a very limited quantity, but at some point in the production line, the release was canceled. So therefore, this was never actually released. It was planned to be released. It had a spine number, and everything was good to go until the last minute. So there were only a very few number of these produced, and they have been floating around every so often in the Laserdisc community, but they've been very hard to find. But I was very fortunate, very fortunate to get my hands on a copy that's in very good condition earlier this year, so I'm very happy about this. Also, here we go. That's the, oops, that's the this is Spinal Tap guitar pick.